Today on Grim 3D, let's talk about the dreaded Prusa print fan error. That's coming up. Stay tuned. So I've been using my Prusa Mk3 for at least a year now. Yeah, it's been quite a while, and it's been completely bulletproof, totally rock solid. Until just a few weeks ago, I got my first taste of Prusa's print fan error. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So the fan on my Prusa is supposed to be on right now at 100%. You'll notice that it is not spinning. You'll also notice that if I reach around back and I mess with the cabling in the back, all of a sudden it is spinning. And then I let go of the cabling and it's not spinning. Let go of the cabling, not spinning, grab the cabling, it is spinning. What gives here? And this is a pretty common problem. We'll get into it. When the fan stops spinning, it causes a print fan error, if you've seen this. Before we go any further, please subscribe. The channel has a whole bunch of new subscribers. Thank you very much for subscribing. Thank you very much for being here, contributing, and helping this community move forward. But we can't do it without subscribers, and I would love to see my numbers go up and up and up, because I think what I'm doing is pretty worthwhile. Definitely subscribe. Back to our regularly scheduled program. Woo! Now, I did some searching online and I found out that the print fan error is created because the wires that run up to the print fan are pretty fragile. And right at the back of the head, where I was grabbing in that little video, there's some strain on that wire that over time, from the head moving back and forth and back and forth, it creates a pinch spot that, moving back and forth, actually breaks the wires internally, so you really can't see it. If you look at the wire insulation, it's actually solid, and there's actually three wires back there. There's a black one, and then there's a red one, and there's a yellow one, and any one of those three can break. If the black or the red one breaks, the fan will actually turn off when it's supposed to be on, and then the Prusa throws a print fan error. But that yellow wire, that third one, is for the Prusa to actually know if the fan is spinning or not. That's a feedback wire. Okay, so if that feedback wire breaks, the interesting thing is, and this actually happened to me once, if the yellow wire is the one that breaks, the fan can still be spinning, but the Prusa doesn't know that it's spinning, which means all of a sudden you get a print fan error when your fan is working fine. That one's even a little bit more confusing. What I've done in the past is I've just looked back there and I've separated the wires a little bit physically, and then I've pulled on each one to find out which one allows stretch and which one doesn't, because the wire inside will not allow stretch, but the insulation around the wire will allow a little bit of give. So then I've noticed by pulling on it I can figure out exactly where that give is, and I've cut into it and just soldered the wire back together. The problem is that I've done this 3 times now, and I keep getting the same print fan error, but with a different wire in a different spot. So, spending some time online, I've found that A, you can replace the print fan, which I did actually order a new print fan from Prusa, but the issue there is the fan's not actually broken. So I don't really want to pull it out, and I don't really want to throw it away, because I'm all about reusing stuff and not wasting, especially our plastics. Okay, which the fan is made out of plastic, so the fan works fine. But the problem is that those wires keep breaking. So online, I've seen really good solutions as to how to create some kind of stress relief that goes over that, so that when you solder those wires back together, the stress relief will cause the wire to not have a specific location where it gets overstressed. But the issue that I have with that one is, by the time you have one wire that goes, there's a good chance that 2 of your other wires are close to going already. So I don't know if I want to go through the trouble of creating that stress relief, which a lot of people have just printed on another printer out of TPU or something like that, some NinjaFlex maybe, but I don't really want to go through that just to have another wire that's already on the edge give way. And remember, this happened to me 3 times, and each time it's been a different wire. The first one was actually the yellow wire, which confused me because my fan was working, but I was getting a print fan error. The second time was the red wire, which turned the fan off. You could obviously see that when the head went one direction, the fan turned off, but when the head went back the other direction, the fan turned back on, which actually eventually gave me a print error because the Prusa board saw the fan was turning off. And the third one was through the black wire. So I actually have a spot on the back of the head there that's about that long, that's got 3 soldered patches right in the middle of it. And now I'm dealing with a print fan error for the 4th time. Alright, so I'm going to try something completely new. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to show you all of this, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get some wire that is rated for very flexible or ultra flexible wire. Okay, so I'm going to cut out a whole chunk of the wire from the back of the Prusa's print head all the way back to about halfway up that wire gang, okay, so that that part that flexes is now replaced with ultra flexible wire. But at the same time, I'm not just going to solder that wire in there. So if something goes bad, I just have to, completely fix it, unsolder it, and put it back. I'm actually going to put on both ends a JST connector, so that part of the fan wire that is suspect to getting broken on a regular basis is not only made up of ultra flexible wire, but is also completely and totally replaceable. So that if I get a print fan error in the future, all I have to do, make myself a new pigtail with the JST connectors and the ultra flexible wire, unplug the broken one, plug in the one that works, back in business. That way I can keep all of my print downtime to an absolute minimum. Stay tuned, I'm going to show you how it's done. The first thing I'm going to do on the Prusa, on my Prusa Diffusa, is I'm going to go ahead and clip some of these zip ties so that I can get this wire wrap off. Now I kind of like this wire wrap, I don't mind it. It's a little bit stiff, which is okay, probably a good thing. And I do believe that Prusa probably thought that between this and the piece of 3mm nylon they have shoved down the middle of it to keep the nice loop on the wires as they go back and forth. I do believe that Prusa believed that would be enough to keep from creating kind of a pinch point, or a point that gave us a little bit too much stress on those fan wires. But I don't think that they took into account exactly how fragile the fan wires are. And you'll see right here, without even looking, you can see right there, there's my fan wire, there's the other side of it, it's totally broken, it's totally open. Here's where I've fixed this fan wire in the past. Okay, there's another patch up here. You can see right there is a piece of electrical tape. So what I'm going to do, I have a little bit extra, I don't know if you can see that. I have a little bit extra wire right here on the front side of this print head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a little bit of this through, just a little bit, because I'll probably pull it back. I'm going to try to take maybe some stress off that. Pull it through a little bit. It's just coming real slowly. I'm going to pull a little bit of that through because I'm going to put my JST connector right here, and then I'm going to pull it back so the JST connector is pretty much on the back of that. Because if you see where my brakes are, they've been pretty much at the end of this part that sticks out the back here that holds on to these the wires for me right there. So there's like a little channel right there that hangs on to those. So I'm just going to take this wire from about here to up here and just cut it out. So this whole section right here is going to be replaced by a pigtail of this ultra flexible wire that I bought This is 22 gauge with silicone insulation. Not that I want it to handle the heat, but most of your ultra flexibles are encased in silicone. This is very, very high strand 22 gauge wire, so it should be able to handle the flex from here to here. It should be able to handle the stress. But then also, since I'm making it into a replaceable pigtail, I can in fact then just take extra pieces of this wire that I have bought, and I can make a new pigtail and just pop the old one out, pop the new one in, good to go, no worries. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting. I'm going to cut right across here as once this past the spot where it's been damaged in the past. I'm just going to go ahead and clip it. And then I'm going to go back to the wires back here somewhere. And I don't know how much leeway I got to give them. There seems to be some places in here where I've tested it in the past for breaks. So I'll go beyond those and clip it there. And so this piece of broken, no good wire is done. It's going to go in the garbage. So I purchased this JSD connector kit. This is 2.0 millimeter pitch. I just purchased it online. You can find it if you just search for it. Not a big deal, but it has actually 2 connector, 3 connector, 4 connector, male, female. So that's what I'll be using for the JST connectors. Now I don't know how much of this you're actually going to be able to see because it's really tight quarters, and I got to get my hands in there, and my hands will get in the way of the camera. So just stick with me. I'll try to explain what I'm doing as I go. I got my soldering iron heating up. First thing I got to do is I'm going to have to get in here and I'm going to have to strip a little bit of the insulation back on these wires. It needs to be a pretty short strip because you can see the JST connector that I'm going to put on there has little tiny short wires on it, and they're just going to get soldered right on there. I'm just going to do them basically in that order: black, red, and yellow. I'm not going to try to rearrange anything or make anything any different than it is. So stick with me. I'm going to go ahead and try to strip these. I'm just going to use my flush cutters for this. It should be pretty straightforward, stripping the wires. I don't generally like to use like legit wire strippers because I have less control with those, but the flush cutters seem to be a little bit sharper than I'm used to, because I'm used to doing this with wire cutters, which I'm actually pretty good at. So there's black one. We'll get that one kind of out of the way. Sometimes I'll actually strip stuff like this with my pocket knife or a little razor blade, but in this case I don't know that it would be able to get in there. The trick to doing it with flush cutters or a pair of wire cutters is the right amount of pressure on the handle to create the right amount of pinch to get through the insulation and not damage the wires inside. So there we go. We've got a little tiny bit stripped off of there. Maybe I can get this kind of out of the way a little bit better there. This is the wire we're looking at right here. Maybe I'll try a better angle on the camera. Stick around. So there we go. We've got the little short wires. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to tin the end of the wires on the fan wires. Basically add a little layer of solder to them. I'm going to separate out those. I'm going to separate out the yellow and the red wire a little bit better. There, they're actually touching. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tin the black wire. It's just adding a little bit of solder to it. Going to tin the red. It looks like the insulation is burning back a little bit, so I'm going to have to be fast. I'm going to do the same to the pins on the JST connector. Make sure if you play this game that you run your temperature about right and that you keep your soldering iron fairly clean. And now what I'm going to do with the tinned connectors on this, focus, on this JST connector and these tinned wires off of the Prusa, I got to kind of reach under here a little bit, is I'm literally then going to just touch them together and let them solder between the two tinned ends flow into a connection. And there we go, there's connection 1. Spin that around just right. There's connection 2. Sorry, I'm sure you can't see this very well. And this one, the wire seems to be going completely the wrong direction. So I'm going to kind of put some preload on that. Bend that around to where it'll make the right connection so it's just right in line with what I'm trying to do here. Bring back in my soldering iron, get those till they're touching line and right side by side, hit them with some heat, and there's connection 3. So now I've got 3 pretty solid connections on the back of that super tiny JST connector, which then what I'm going to do with it, since there's no open metallic areas here, I'm not going to worry about covering it or insulating that, but I am going to then pull it back so that wire goes in this channel right here, that set of wires that goes up to the filament sensor. It's going to go back in their channel, nice and neat, and then this tinned new connector for the fan is going to pull not all the way in because I don't want to break it, I don't want to put too much stress on it, but about right there, and then I'll have about the same amount of slack as I've always had on my fan in the front, and then I've got a place right there to make the connection for my new replaceable pigtail. For number 2, I'm going to do the same thing right here. I'm just going to separate those out a little bit so that I can work with the wires individually, nice and carefully. I don't want to strip them all the way back up in there. I'm just going to get in between them, pull them apart just a touch, which I'm just doing with my fingers. There we are. We're in business. I'm going to then use my flush cutters again to strip these, and basically doing the same thing that I just did on the front. So stay tuned. So that's the way I'm going to do it. I mean, I got to tin the ends of these first. Now I'm going to go ahead and just solder them together, the tinned ends. So there's connection number 1. The red one was in the middle. Got to put some preload on this wire to get it in where I want it to be, on the angle that I want. There we go. That's much better. Connection number 2. Some preload on this wire. To get that into where I want it to be. And there's connection number 3. Get rid of my little tail of solder on there. Don't like those because they can poke through whatever kind of insulation you decide to put on there. And there you have the first part. Now, for now, I'm going to leave this open. I'm not going to put any insulation on here. Eventually, I think I'll feed some small strips of electrical tape in between those wires so they don't get a touch, and then wrap it with electrical tape as well. The other end I'm just going to leave as is. I'm never going to cover that one. But I'm going to leave this open so that I can remember or see how all my wires work out so that I can make my first pigtail, which is what's happening next. So here I have my pigtail wire. Of course, the yellow is not going to be yellow on this one. It's going to be white. So I'm using the white wire in place of the yellow. I know that the red needs to be in the middle. I'm going to really quick. I think these are a little bit too long. I'm going to go ahead and measure how long they actually need to be on the Prusa. So they need to be about that long, and I always like to measure and leave a little bit extra behind, a little bit extra on the measurement. So I'm going to go cut route about right there, and those wires may be useful some other place. So then this particular kit has the female sections of the JST. Connectors are in these these crimpable kind of plug-in connectors things style. So I'm going to cut off of here. I'm going to cut 6 of these off of here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I know these are meant to be done with a crimper, but I don't own the crimper. I didn't want to buy the crimper. I might in the future, but I am positive these can be done with solder and my flush cutters. Probably not just as well, but fairly well. So the first thing I'm going to do is on the ends of all of my wires. I am going to start with the red one because it goes in the middle. I am guaranteed that this one will be in the right place no matter what. Not that it matters because I have to plug these connectors into the JST plastic piece in the future, so I'm just going to strip just a little teeny tiny bit of that. I'm going to remove one of these off of here so I can deal with one of them at a time. I've got my nice silicone mat that's heat resistive, so that's nice. I'm not going to damage it soldering. But the first thing I'm actually going to do with this, I think, is I am going to tin the end of this so that it will be ready when I am ready. So I've got a little bit, this is the 22 gauge silicone wrapped wire or silicone insulated wire. Here we go. That's tin. Now what I'm going to do with this is I am going to very carefully, I don't know if you can see that very well, I need a macro lens for my camera, I guess. I'm going to very carefully lay that in this connector. Now this is probably not exactly where it goes, but I don't really care because I'm going to solder it anyways. But I'm just going to crimp this in here just a little bit with these flush cutters. Don't cut it, just crimp it in there a little bit so that it will stay where I put it, so that I can solder it later. And I'm actually going to crimp this one too, which was probably not to go on the wire, but was to go around the insulation. But once again, since I'm soldering and don't have the actual crimp tool, I don't really care. So I'm going to go ahead and crimp that in there, and then I'm going to lay that back down. And this is going to be pretty tricky because you want to make sure that you get some heat on it, enough heat for the solder to flow, but not enough for it to flow up into the female end of the JST or to damage the little clip that the JST holds onto. So I'm going to start with a clean soldering tip, and I'm just going to go from the very, very back of this, and I'm going to hit it with just enough solder and heat for boom. Super quick. I just saw it flow as soon as it flowed, and I'm running at about 515 degrees on the soldering iron. As soon as it started to flow, I pulled off of there, and so you probably can't. So I pulled it off of there. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'll zoom in on this later or something. It's about as good as my camera's going to do, I think. But I pulled it right off of there because I'm concerned about this little tail right here, which is what holds it in the plastic JST connector. I'm not too concerned about this stuff here. I probably will bend that around so it hangs onto the wire a little bit better, or I may just cut it off. I don't know. It's on there pretty solid, so we're in pretty good shape. So now we get to do end 2, and then we get to do all of the ones, both ends of the other 2 wires as well. So stay tuned. Same procedure, different wire. So this one right here, I'm sure you can't see that, but it's really tiny. In fact, I've been using, for those of you that think, man, he's got bionic eyes, you can see that little tiny, so I really can't. I am in fact using a set of 2.0 reader glasses to strap a set of magnifiers to my face, but this actually just filled up with solder in the hole that the JST connector plugs into, so I'm gonna have to cut that one off and do it again. So now I have my 3 wires that all have ends on them, and now I get to find out how these JST connectors, the female side likes this to be connected, which is why I'm going to start with the middle one. So I don't know if I need to bend this little tab over or cut it off yet, so let's check it out. So this JST connector is going to go in the plastic this direction, and it looks like I'm going to want to cut that off. I really don't want it left on there. I don't want it to hang out and cause a short, because remember, this is active electricity, active voltage. It's not enough to shock anybody or hurt anybody, but it is enough to just throw the same error again, because the Prusa mainboard will be getting the wrong information, the wrong feed. So once again, let's try that. Let's try to put that in there again. Oh, so there we go. It's in there nice, tight. It doesn't come back out. So I get me another 3-pin JST female, and I will put this one on this side, like so. Very, very carefully. That's upside down. Very carefully till it snaps in. There we go. Look how clean that is. That is super clean. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare this with the wires that I left open on the Prusa to make sure that the next wires get in the right place on both ends, just to make sure that there's no wiring error here. Okay, so I'm back. So this, the way this connects into that connector on the Prusa is the top part here wants the white wire, which remember is actually the yellow wire on the Prusa. Okay, so the white wire is going to go on the top here, and I'm going to go ahead and insert that until it clicks. I hope. Have it upside down again. So that one's in there, which means that obviously the black one is going to go on the other end, on the other side. These could be giving me trouble on their way in because I soldered, which means that the connection is a little bit bigger than the plastic wants it to be. So I'm ending up forcing them a little bit with my needle nose, but they look like they're going in nice and solid. So then we go to the other end, and I'm going to double check and make sure that I didn't cross any wires on the other end as well, which means that on this one, the black needs to go in right here. There, that one went in nice, which means only leaves me one slot for the last white connection. And this one's definitely got a little too much solder on it, so I'll have to push that in a little bit harder than the others. Looks like it's in there okay. So let's do a quick test of my pigtail. I'm going to go ahead and put some male, or try to put some male JST connectors on here. So there's one. There's two. And then I'm going to go ahead and get out my handy dandy continuity tester, which is just a cheap, actually practically free digital multimeter. And I'm going to go ahead and, now mine doesn't make any noise, but I'll be able to see if I have continuity on these color to color. So going from the white to the white, yes, I have continuity. From the red to the red, yes, I have continuity. And from the black to the black, yes, I have continuity. And a quick cross check. From the black, I do not have continuity to the red or the white. From the red, I do not have continuity to the white or the black. And from the white, I do not have continuity for red or the black. So I'm seeing three connections, no random connections, no cross wires, no shorts. This is a good connector. So I'm going to remove the JST stand-ins off of there. Multimeter, get that out of here. And then I'm going to go ahead and plug this in the way it was designed. There's one side. Here's the other side. I'm going to hold that. So here's my idea on how it's gone into play. I have the JST connector right there. It's nice and solid. And then I have another JST connector right here, right at the back of the print head. And it looks solid. Looks like it's in there pretty good. Just giving a little bit extra pressure with my needle nose so I can guarantee that it's pretty good. So this whole high friction, high movement, damaging area right through here is now covered with a replaceable, removable and replaceable pigtail of high flexibility wire. So that's my plan. I'm going to put this back together, put it back over on its shelf, and we'll see how it works. Stay tuned. So I've got my Prusa back in its location over here, and we can see the fan. It's not running right now because I've plugged it in, but I haven't turned it on yet. So I wanted you to be there for when I turn it on so everybody can see what's going on. I'm going to reach around the side. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. It's coming up. You'll notice the fan is running, kind of doing its pre-flight check. Fan has turned off. That, however, is not what I was looking for when I did this wire. The problem that I had before was that it would start a break in the wires themselves, so that when the head moved to one side, it would turn the fan off, and when it would move back to the other side, it would turn the fan back on, and would just confuse the Prusa overall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to my Octoprint, and I'm going to tell Octoprint to turn the fan on full blast, 100%, and then I'm going to physically move the carriage back and forth and see if the fan turns off. So now, as you can see, fan is running full speed. I do still have the wiring open in the back so that if something goes wrong I can repair it before I button it all back up. I'm going to push the print head to one side. We're good. Fan's still on. I'm going to pull the print head back to the other side. We're good. Fan's still on. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrap it. I'll probably add some electrical tape to that so that it doesn't squish it together, and then just throw my wire wrap around it again and call it done. So stick around for the wrap up. So there you have it, the Prusa fan wire fix. Now, a couple of things that I thought about while doing this. First of all, yeah, it's probably a little bit harder to get it set up and to get it going than just to replace the fan and print out some kind of stress relief. But to tell you the truth, I really don't know if the stress relief would work really well. A lot of people get about a year's worth of service out of one set of fan wires. The fan wires, I think, here are, for the most part, your weak link. All right, because even with a stress relief on that, there is still going to be a stress point because there is a lot of movement back there that takes place over days and weeks. It's just constant, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So going with a different grade of wire, a more industrial, flexible grade of wire, is probably your best bet. Okay, and second of all, I decided to do it this way instead of the ways I'd seen online because my method, this method, makes it so that it's replaceable. If the pigtail goes out, I just make a new one. In fact, I can take the same parts, possibly, and just put new wires on it, which I have, feet of those wires. I mean, they come on in a pack that I bought online, so I think I have, a few yards of that wiring. So a little piece at a time, I can pretty much guarantee that my Prusa fan, if it doesn't run forever on this set of wires, I can pretty much guarantee it's going to run forever before I even run out of wires to make new pigtails. So as far as a long-term solution goes, I really think that this is better than just printing a stress relief and strapping it on there. And because I don't like wasting things, I don't like throwing away fans that work fine, I don't like trashing the plastics and throwing them in the garbage when they're still usable, still serviceable, I think that this solution makes a big difference. I literally scrapped like 6 inches of wire that is substandard. I mean, obviously the wire on those fans is substandard for this type of situation. I think the manufacturers of those fans could probably step up their game a little bit and get some better wire on there, because I really don't think that in the beginning of their manufacturing process they thought that that fan wire was going to be moving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for days at a time. Okay, so that's fine. I'm hoping that Prusa research themselves, somehow they come up with a solution to this problem. But until then, better wire with a replaceable pigtail. I think that's probably the way to go. So that's what I did. Well, that's it for this episode of Grim 3D. Leave a comment below if you'd like to. Smash that like button. Definitely subscribe if you like what I'm doing. We'll see you out there.